Hello friends, I am Witkoff. Only the people of Ukraine can speak about the territories of the Ukrainian state, and recognizing any temporarily occupied territories as Russian rather than Ukrainian is a red line that Ukrainians will not cross. This is how the President of Ukraine commented on the recent statements by the special representative of the President of the United States, Steve Witkoff, who, after another meeting with the Russian President, Putin emphasized that the main issue in the Russian-Ukrainian war is precisely the issue of the 5 territories. In Zelenskyy's opinion, people who make such statements do so beyond their competence and, as can be understood, beyond their authority. But it is worth realizing another important point. We do not know exactly what Putin and Witkoff discuss when they talk about Ukrainian territories that are currently under Russian occupation. It is likely that the Russian president is not so much interested in Ukraine recognizing the Russian status of the Donetsk, Luhansk, Kherson, Zaporizhzhia regions and the Autonomous Republic of Crimea, as he is in the withdrawal of Ukrainian troops from the territories of Donetsk, Luhansk, Kherson, and Zaporizhzhia, meaning those parts of these Ukrainian regions that are currently controlled by the Ukrainian authorities, where the Ukrainian army is located. Why might this be important for Putin? Ukraine's formal recognition of the territorial belonging of its regions to Russia does not change anything in the Russian-Ukrainian confrontation. Russia already considers these territories as subjects of the Russian Federation without this recognition, and Ukrainian approval or disapproval does not greatly concern the Russian president, because from his point of view, Ukrainian statehood itself is a temporary phenomenon. And it is not for Kyiv to decide what is written in the constitution of the Russian Federation. However, if Russia, through the mediation of the American administration, manages to achieve the withdrawal of Ukrainian troops from the parts of Donetsk, Luhansk, Kherson, and Zaporizhzhia, regions currently controlled by Ukrainian forces, this would be a completely different turn of events, as you understand. Firstly, it will be absolutely clear that Ukraine has not only lost the war to the Russian Federation, but is also forced to abandon, without a fight, the territories that Ukrainian soldiers defended. Secondly, Russian troops will enter the part of the territories where there are no real fortifications or defenses that would hinder the further advance of the Russian army. And this means that after the ceasefire is inevitably broken, the Russian army will have the opportunity to begin the occupation of new Ukrainian regions. And then you know the scenario. Moscow will demand that Ukrainian troops leave the territory of the newly occupied Ukrainian region that the Russian invaders failed to capture. At the same time, no one will demand that Ukraine legally recognize the occupation, and this could become an important trump card for the Trump administration in further negotiations with Kyiv. If you desire peace, if you want missiles and drones not to explode over you, you must concede territories, simply because Putin has already recorded these territories in his country's constitution. Yes, he made a mistake, but he has nowhere to retreat. He needs to save face. But in the end, you will be guaranteed peace and tranquility. Yes, an unjust peace, but any peace, even a bad one, is better than a good war. We know this proverb very well, And rest assured that people like Steve Witkoff will use it once they realize that Putin is ready for a ceasefire. And this truly is a very serious trap for the further development of events on the Russian-Ukrainian front, because there is currently a sufficiently fortified line of contact. And as we can see, for 3 years and already 2 months, the Russians have been unable to accomplish the task that Putin set for his army back on February 24th, 2022, to reach the administrative borders of the Donetsk and Luhansk regions of Ukraine. Remember that Putin's so-called special military operation began precisely with this order: to reach the administrative borders of the so-called People's Republics, invented in the Kremlin back in 2014, and change the government in Kiev to ensure the possibility of further annexation of Ukrainian territories in the east and south of our country. None of these tasks have been accomplished. Regarding the administrative borders of the Zaporizhia and Kherson regions, I am not even mentioning. There, the Russians failed to even establish control over the regional center of the Zaporizhia region. And they also had to lose control over the regional center of the Kherson region. And they, of course, wanted to achieve, with the help of the Trump administration, what they have been unable to achieve for years on the battlefield. From that point of view, it can be called Steve Witkoff's negotiations, with Putin as the latest weapon of the Russian Federation, much more important to Putin than all his drones and North Korean missiles combined. Because if we agree with the logic of the special representative of the American president, who is evidently convincing Trump himself of the validity of such approaches, we might lose a large part of the territory that our fighters are defending without any military actions. And therefore, it seems to me that now it is necessary to talk not only about the fact that Ukraine does not recognize the Russian status of those regions annexed by the Kremlin and recorded in the Constitution of the Russian Federation as subjects of this state. The main point is that Russia should not agree with, is that the notion that it will cede to Russia those territories that the Kremlin has inscribed in its state's constitution and continues to persistently represent as its own territories seized by Ukraine. This will be one of the main conflicts in the negotiation process, which, and this also needs to be understood, has nothing to do with the actual end of the war or even a ceasefire, but is solely a stalling tactic to continue military actions amidst further negotiations with the administration of Donald Trump. Thank you, friends. Stay on this channel. Subscribe to it. Subscribe to social media, to the channel on Patreon, Buy Me a Coffee, and Donatella Curti, which help develop these resources. Use the sponsorship feature on YouTube.